This is Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony on FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer.
Now, like everyone I know, we have lots of questions. How could this happen? What created this moment? Why? And that's motivated by a genuine motivation to understand, to learn, to prevent in the future. But I want to caution everyone. While we are working hard, while the good men and women who are working hard are doing so with due diligence, at this juncture, speculation is unhelpful and it can be downright dangerous. So just ask that people lower the temperature of rhetoric. Keep your loved ones close and keep this community close to your hearts. Let's keep doing the work together. Let's be kind and let's love our neighbors.
That was Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Now, I just want to go through, she said we need to lower the temperature of our rhetoric. Now, this was in regards to the Grand Blank shooting in Michigan. Now, rhetoric, I know my good friend Michael Letts will allow me to the opportunity or the flexibility to do what I'm going to do real quick. I'm just going to play the rhetoric that we have out there.
But as somebody who understands history, when I see ICE, I see slave patrols. Now, I never lived through the slave patrol period, but if you know the history of policing in this country, then you understand that they were born out of slave patrols.
Now, that was Jasmine Crockett. Here's MSNBC.
Of those attacks.
Chris, coming back to rooftop trend, coming back to engraving trend, what do you make of that? Does that suggest people are being inspired? Are you worried about copycats?
Yes. I don't know if the rooftop trend is going to be a thing. I mean, it could just be coincidental that the best vantage point just happened to be elevated positions in this case. But people emulating this kind of attack is certainly a concern. The irony with the writing, the first time we really saw that was Brenton Tarrant in the Christchurch shooting in a mosque in New Zealand, and he was a fierce, white supremacist. And
now, Gavin Newsom.
I'll be signing a bill, the first in the nation, saying enough. ICE, unmask. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
Now, Marcos Charles, who's the ICE ERO Assistant Director.
Violent rhetoric has led to over 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers, and it has to stop. In contrast to those who would demonize our men and women, yesterday our brave officers ran back into danger, along with ATF, our partners, to save the detainees while shots were still being fired. Those ICE officers just showed the world who they really are. Law enforcement officers who want the best for our country.
Now, before we get into the shooting that happened in Michigan, we're joined by my good friend Michael Letts. He's the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA. It's a national grassroots nonprofit that has provided thousands of bulletproof vests for police officers across America. At a moment when violence feels like it is spiraling out of control, Michael's voice could not be more urgent. 4 people were gunned down inside of Mormon church before the sanctuary itself was set ablaze. In North Carolina, a gunman stormed the American Fish restaurant, shattering the peace of an ordinary evening and reminding us that violence no longer respects boundaries of faith, family, or community. At the same time, President Trump has designated Antifa as a terrorist organization, igniting fierce debate over whether America is finally ready to confront domestic threats with the seriousness they deserve. Michael has spent decades not only equipping officers with the life-saving armor they need, but also exposing the cultural, political, and moral failures that have left America vulnerable. He knows the stakes for officers, for citizens, and for a nation that is deciding whether to restore order or watch it collapse. Michael, welcome back to Detroit's Morning Answer.
Always a privilege to be with you, John.
Now,
always get excited when I'm on the program with you.
Now, you heard all of the rhetoric, and you heard the governor of Michigan say that we need to quiet down a lot of the political rhetoric. Michael, when you look at, everything that I just laid out, the shootings, both shootings, ICE agent officers, detainees being shot and killed, ICE being shot at, ICE on a daily basis at these facilities being attacked. Where are we in America today, Mike?
We're at a place that's getting more and more concerning and more destructive. Let me give a quick update on what's going on in Michigan from the standpoint. Most people is after the investigation, of course, the 4 dead, the shooter's dead, that's 5, and then the 8 that were in the hospital, one being critical. Still searching for bodies in the debris from the fire. But here's the most important thing. After a second review of the pickup truck that was used to go through the doors, we discovered 4 IEDs underneath. And let me just make sure that our listeners understand what we're talking about. This is what we use in Afghanistan and in Iraq. One alone, much less 4, would have leveled that building.
Wow.
So here's what we're looking at. He was not looking to go in and just shoot a couple people. We've now escalated it to wanting to do bombings, terrorist bombings, and kill hundreds at a time. Now, we've known from our intel services that the Islamic jihadists have been planning to up the ante and are looking to do multiple terrorist attacks on American soil, similar to 9/11, but not one incident, trying to spread them out across the country all on the same day or within the same time period. So it's very concerning now that we're gone from just hatred speech to shootings, and now we're looking at trying to do mass destruction, mass killings with bombs. That's a very threatening path to be going down, John.
Yeah, as it relates to the shooter in Michigan, so are you implying that may be more to this? Because when I first heard it, I thought it was more personal towards the Mormon church. Apparently, he had a girl there. I know they were saying the initial reports was that he'd had to have his tattoos removed in order to join the Mormon church, and he didn't want to do that. So are you implying that there may be a terrorist connection to this?
There's no question in my mind. What we're looking at now, John, is take a look at this scenario. What is the left trying to do? They're trying to obviously destroy conservatives and any values that this country had. They want to destroy this country from the inside out. And they're having the hardest time doing that because a lot of the current policies the current administration are doing, are working, as we all know. And so they're trying to find a way to divert that and cause you to think negatively. So what they're looking to do, what better things to do? And you notice they're saying he was a Christian who didn't like Mormons.
Right.
Both of those groups are conservative.
Right.
So what better thing to do than to start creating infighting within your groups, and also putting out a very strong demonstration that we mean business. We're going to do as much destruction as possible. Here's some of the things we've noticed, John. We've noticed, like in the previous active shooter things, it was a transgender community, LGBT. They're picking groups that already have great hatred for either principle, values, or this country. Islamic jihadists have always had that position because their state is, if you don't convert to Islam, then you are an infidel and worthy of death. Look at what our higher institutions are doing, higher education institutions. We've got professors that are saying death to America. America's a bad place to be. America needs to be knocked down a couple of notches, et cetera, et cetera. So you're finding these groups that are full of hatred to begin with, kind of bring them together, using them as a resource to build your own little army to go out and create terrorist attacks. And what was the purpose of the terrorist attack? That's what I'm calling it, a terrorist attack in Michigan. Imagine what that does to the rest of the community, John, when you're on a church. Remember, churches are supposed to be sanctuaries.
Yeah.
You're at a church, it's on a Sunday morning, and you're in a small town America.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get nailed there, John, where can you go that's safe? That's what they're attempting to do, fill us with fear, and we're not going to let that happen.
So what's with this? There are a lot of people saying that he had a Trump 2020 Make Liberals Cry Again T-shirt on. They're trying to tie him to the Trump camp now. Is there any credibility to that?
No. You got to give the leftist liberals credit. They're smart. They're not stupid. And just what you said, trying to tie in, they're doing everything they possibly can. And when they recruit people or have people that help assist in these kind of things, they provide a little extra things so that after the fact, it makes it easier for them to tie up. Or they even help them. Let's post something on your social media. I love Trump and we'll do everything I can to defeat those who don't like something that's totally out of character with them, just to set a stage so that they can immediately jump and try to characterize this as being conservative. Yeah. Why else would the mainstream media immediately come out and say he was a Christian who hated Mormons?
Makes sense to me.
Now, and the point being, John, is we have to wake up as a country. Yeah. It's not going to just go away if we bury our heads in the sand. This hatred and violence is escalating at a rate like it's on a gorilla. There's got to be accountability.
Yeah,
people have to see that you're going to be accountable for your actions, A, and then B, we're going to have some frank discussion in this country of what does the First Amendment mean. I don't think our forefathers ever suggested that you have the right to incite violence and kill people. I don't think that was the purpose of the First Amendment.
Yeah, Michael, President Trump designated Antifa as a terrorist organization. Some people, they were out there praising it. Some people mocked it. From a pure law enforcement perspective, in your opinion, was it a symbolic gesture, or does it carry real consequences on the ground? And before you answer that, I played this before you were to come on. This was back in a debate between Trump and Biden had this to say.
I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa is an idea, not an organization.
Antifa is an idea, not an organization. Has anybody told that to Antifa yet?
No. and here's what I'm laughing at, John. We've heard that for so often. Well, if it's an idea, then it's amazing how that idea gets its literal hands on dollars that are coming in to help fund its activities.
That's true. And for them to go after the those who are funding it, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I've been calling, you and I talked about the whole RICO going after the funding mechanisms that is funding not only them, BLM, the organization, and other leftist terrorist groups, in my opinion. How important is that that the American people know that we're going to, finally, somebody has the gall to say enough is enough?
I think it's extremely important. I think the whole strategy depends on it. We've been, having great discussions with this in the administration, and you haven't seen the last RICO. I mean, this is definitely what needs to happen. You want to cut off, yes, to keep people from doing what they're doing, but the best way to do that initially, cut off the funding.
Yeah.
There's no money to finance. It's interesting you have all these riots. Well, when you begin to take a look at the riots, the same people. It's money that are paying them to riot, money that's putting them in a bus to transport them from one place to the next. Cut off all that cash flow and see how quick this dries up.
Yeah. Now, I want you to hear this from a Portland resident. President Trump is finally had enough of what's going on up there. I saw a video on X. That was this pedestrian underpass. It looked like World War III had broken out under this pedestrian underpass. But I want you to hear what this Portland resident has to say about the Trump coming to Portland.
I am so happy that Trump is sending the National Guard in here. I live in this building. We both live in this building. We've been asking for help for months, and we're finally going to get it.
When do you think they're coming?
When? Not soon enough, man. Not soon enough.
What do you want to see happen?
I want them to come in and mess them up and just annihilate these people. Whatever force they need. Gals like her and the other people that live in the building. Watch out. They're the ones. They're the ones that I'm concerned about. So
now, Michael, Portland, out of many states, they've been going through it. This is where Chaz and all of that, when they set up the encampments and basically took over an entire city. When you think about that, Mike, and you hear this resident, people they're so fatigued with these so-called protests, violent protests being called a protest when they're not. It's about time that we have somebody that's willing to go in to a lot of these cities and end the scourge of violence. Correct?
That is correct, and we have said all along, ever since the first time I was on your show, when we didn't know which administration we were going to have.
Yeah.
That if we had a new administration, that unfortunately law enforcement has been too victimized. What I mean by victimized is got too many of them, had too many of them quit, and forced many resignations with vaccinations, et cetera, et cetera. We do not have the manpower anymore to maintain law and order. We're going to have to partner with our military assets until we can restore order. Then once we build the forces back up in law enforcement, the military will go bye-bye.
Yeah.
But not until. We have to have that ability. And every officer I've talked to on the street, I talk to thousands across the country, John, all agree. We don't like to admit it, but we're in a mess in this country, and we're going to need help to get it cleaned up.
Now, Michael, as a man of the cloth, I think it's time for churches to start having this conversation and be more vocal about security from the pulpit. I know a lot of church pastors. If I attended a church where they said if I saw that no gun sign, I'm leaving, because I'm not leaving. I didn't go to a fundraiser recently because they said that I couldn't bring my weapon. I am responsible for my safety. I don't want a cop to be responsible for my safety. I am. Churches, like schools, are soft targets. Is it high time that these church leaders, these pastors, start saying we got to develop security teams throughout, no matter where you are as far as worship? Now is the time, Michael. Is that correct?
You are exactly right. What they need to be doing is they need to have a security committee now. Each church does, whether it's small or whether it's large. Makes no difference. And you need to have a security plan in place, what you're going to do for crisis occurs. Who's on the security team, make sure that they are trained and know how to use weapons, and make sure they're armed, and make sure they have what we call sentry posts. You know what it's like, John?
Yeah.
Sentry posts everywhere. I mean, I hate to say that, but you rotate it so that you don't miss being able to worship as well. But you have to do that now. That's just the price we're having to pay by living in the society that we've allowed to become. When I say we, the churches, had they taken an more active and more forceful role years ago, calling out standards and values the way they should be, instead of trying to pacify people like the country club, we wouldn't be in this mess. So the churches are a part of the problem. They need to be part of the solution now.
Now, Michael, I always have to bring up Invest USA on every interview that we do. How can people support what you're doing with Invest USA so that no officer in America ever has to serve without the protection they deserve?
You go to our website. That's investUSA.org. It's a charity.org. They can make the contribution towards the vest. Let me just throw this out, John. You looked at been watching the news the last few active shooter incidents with the church, the Catholic Church, with the school, et cetera. Here's what you see. You see these officers responding in amazing bravery, jumping out, rushing in. They've got concealable vests on. They don't have active shooter vests on. They don't know that active shooters committed suicide. So if they're going to encounter him, they're going to be at a distinct disadvantage. But they do it anyway. Folks, can we not show our love and support for them, for their willingness to defend us regardless of the cost, by just making sure they have a vest?
That's a fair ask. If you're talking to me, I think it is. But you know what? I think I would be remiss if I didn't pose this question. Are you hopeful that America can turn the tide against this epidemic of violence? Or do you believe we're entering a darker chapter unless there is a spiritual awakening?
I believe this, John. I believe that, first of all, there does have to be a spiritual awakening. I believe, before we even talk about the spiritual aspect, I believe we are entering a darker phase. There's no question. But we're right at the very tip. We're pushing on the door. We should have the ability to close that door by accountability, by making sure that we hold people. I'm not just talking now about accountability for their actions. I'm talking about even accountability for their verbiage when they try to incite violence, incite riots. And then, of course, I think none of that really carries over for a long period of time unless there's a spiritual awakening and people return back to values and faith, especially with our young people, John. I'm concerned about that. If you and I solved all the crimes this afternoon and we had no crime in the country by tonight, it wouldn't last long unless our young people are able to maintain it. And right now, I have concern that they can do that.
Yeah. And, one final question. You see Candace Owens out there saying that there was government involvement in Charlie Kirk's assassination because they won't hand over the videotape that they had that was pointing out to the crowd. First of all, it's an active investigation, and they turned everything over to the FBI. What do you say, real quick? We got about a minute left. What would you say to people who are listening to Candace Owens as she pushes this government involvement conspiracy in the death of Charlie Kirk?
Well, here's the first thing I would say, and I've said this to Candace, is I always welcome questions.
Yeah.
I think it's good to question, and I think, we as a government need to be transparent and provide answers. However, you hit a very key point. Sometimes I don't have the answers right up front. I'm investigating. I can't give them to you until I have them. So I think we should be making sure we ask questions, but to automatically assume that because you didn't answer me the minute I asked the question, you're hiding something, you're far-reaching a little bit. Give this the opportunity. Now, if once the answers are here, we refuse to share them, that's another matter we need to discuss.
That was the perfect answer. Michael Letts, founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA. It's always a privilege to have you on Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, John. God bless you. God bless America. Keep up the great work you're doing. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir. Michael Letts. Woo! I always enjoy talking to him, Paul. He's always a treat. He really is. Go out there. Go to Invest USA website. Help a police officer come home to be with their family. Invest USA, I believe.org. You're listening to Detroit's Morning Answer. We'll be right back.